And you've translated the Bible multiple in different languages, correct?
Yeah, I've done a lot of translation for that, either again in the course of graduate school or my job. I you know I'm probably the only person in the world who has compared every word of the King James, the English translation, to the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek word or segment of a word from which it derives. And I didn't do that because I wanted to prove anything. That was my job for a year. Where I work, we create digital tools, and we created something called a reverse interlinear. And I got to do the King James, and that's what it was. It was handwork. It took me a whole year to create this digital tool, but you had to look at every word and align it with every segment of the original language. So it's not translation, but it's kind of like translation. But I've done some pure translation too. But in the job I have, it involves a lot of that kind of work. So yeah, I'm used to sticking my head in ancient texts and those kinds of projects.
Why is there such a big change when if you read some of the stuff in the Old Testament, there's points there where there's talks about 50,000 men, women, and children being killed because of their lineage, and then it just seems to kind of mellow out after that, 1,000 years later or whatever. So, what do you think the biggest change was? Do you think it was man that decided, or God was like, okay, it's time to chill out, let's relax. This is a little too intense.
Yeah, well, there are a number of things in play here. The wars of conquest and the so-called genocide. I mean, people like to use these terms because they're inflammatory. Like what goes on in the wars of conquest is just this indiscriminate genocidal killing. Well, I would invite people to get my book Unseen Realm, and in chapters 23 and 25, you're going to get a different perspective. Now, what you're going to read, if you actually again frame the conquest accounts in the supernatural worldview terms of the Israelite, if you actually go through the account, what the Israelites are told to do, there are a number of verbs for it. There are verbs of killing, for sure. There's karem, which is to devote to destruction, shema, destroy, all that kind of stuff. But there are also verbs like drive out, dispossess, expel that don't involve killing. Well, it's kind of interesting. If you look up the conquest accounts where the verbs of killing occur, they overlap with places where the Anakim were seen when the Israelites spied out the land. Who are the Anakim? They are descendants of the Nephilim. They are very specific bloodlines. They're very specific giant clans. And in the Israelite religious worldview, these were people groups, again, that were unusual because they were unusually tall, but they were believed to be spawned either directly or, again, with some, kind of divine intervention. They were deliberately believed to be raised up by hostile gods to exterminate Israel. So when it came to those bloodlines, it was an us or them mentality. That was the way they looked at it. They didn't look at everybody that way, but the Anakim were, sprinkled throughout the land. They lived among other people. So yeah, there's going to be lots of casualties that didn't have to be casualties, but it's not this indiscriminate bloodlust, that people want to cast it as. That is a misreading of the text. And I know some of your listeners might not like me saying that, but that's just too bad because that's what it is. You have to read the text closely because the conquest begins and ends with the Anakim. It begins in Numbers 13. Moses and Joshua get to the border of the land after they leave Sinai. They trek over to the land. They send in 12 spies. 10 of them come back and say, hey, they all come back and say, hey, the land is everything God said it was. It's awesome. But 10 of them say, we might as well just turn around and leave right now because we saw the Anakim in the land. And we're like grasshoppers next to them. The Anakim are from the Nephilim, the giants. There's just no way we can do this. And 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, say, what's the problem? Weren't you there at the Red Sea? I mean, come on, we can do this. But God says, fine, you don't want to believe. I'm going to send you, let you wander for 40 years. So that's the conquest initially fails. And then 40 years later, when they go back in under Joshua and they have these wars, how does Joshua define the conclusion of the conquest in Joshua 11? There are no more Anakim in the land. Okay, it begins and ends with the giant clans. Joshua adds, well, the ones that are left, there are actually some left. They went to the Philistine cities of Gath, and Ashdod and Ashkelon. Well, guess where we find the rest of the giant clans later in Israel's history? The Philistines, the Philistine countries. It's Goliath. He's from Gath. Okay, and so Goliath and his brothers are the last vestiges of these bloodlines, and that's why those stories are in the Bible, because they have to be killed off. It's very focused, again, on particular groups. It's not just, hey, let's go in there and kill everybody we can. But again, that's how people want to portray it, because they have an axe to grind, again, against the Bible for whatever reason. And some people have good reasons. Some people have bad reasons, in my experience. So if we want to be honest, if we want to really be honest, maybe we ought to read the thing, okay, and read it a few times and read it closely so we can speak more intelligently about this thing we call the Bible.